Hello, and welcome to Pull to Open, an ongoing quest to watch all of Doctor Who, the entire run of the television program, old and new, in random order. I'm Pete Paschal.
And I'm Chris Taylor, and wow, do we have an exciting episode for you today, not just because of the show that we're going to visit, which, spoiler alert, is Frontios, a Peter Davison serial from the classic show, but also we have some exciting news that we've just discovered as we started to record the podcast. We're recording this. Recording this on Sunday, May the 8th, and Pete, what has just happened?
The energy level, I'm about to blow a gasket. It's like literally a couple of hours before we sat down to record this podcast, and literally as we were the seconds leading up to prepping for the podcast, we realized, because it's a Sunday and we're not plugged in as we usually are, that the announcement for the next Doctor has happened. So by the time you're listening to this will be old news.
Yes.
But it's really just happened to us that the BBC has come out and announced that an actor by the name of Ncuti Gatwa is the Doctor. And I believe I'm pronouncing that correctly.
Ncuti Gatwa.
We quickly looked it up. So congratulations to Ncuti Gatwa. I mean, wow, that's amazing. We have a sleeper, like a out of nowhere announcement.
Yeah.
But crazy news.
Very exciting. He is a Scottish actor. He was born in Rwanda, but he has been based in Scotland ever since, and nearly 29 years old. And it's interesting that we were just talking about the Scottish connection of Doctor Who when we did Eaters of Light, and now here's another one.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Here is the third or fourth Scottish actor to play the Doctor.
Yeah, not the youngest ever, even though 29 is younger. Definitely younger than Capaldi, who was the last Scottish actor to play the Doctor. But Matt Smith, I think when he got the role, he was 27, something like that.
Right.
But who's counting?
Yeah. So Ncuti Gatwa, most known for a role in Sex Education as a character named Eric. I feel like I've watched one or two episodes of that. Now I'm obviously going to have to watch the rest of it. But yeah, it's a Netflix sitcom.
Well,
He's won a lot of praise for that.
Yeah, and should be noted, of course, that the first person of African descent to play. Well, I guess. Oh, wait a second. Obviously, Joe Martin. I mean, duh.
Yes.
But in terms of the lead, the actual person headlining the show, certainly the very first.
The ongoing actual Doctor.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. So a lot of stuff. I mean, we're really just absorbing this news, guys, and we haven't seen. Neither of us have looked at the reaction online or what people are talking about. But I guess right away you're thinking like, okay, well, going with a youthful male. I mean, you kind of want I think to continue a little bit of that energy that we got from the Tennant Smith. Both Tennant wasn't exactly an old man when he first got there. He was roughly maybe about the same age, 30-ish. I don't know, but he was, he definitely had youthful energy. So I think they're probably going back for some of that, some more action-esque type scripts, and I don't know, that might be in our future.
And this was RTD's choice. There's a great photo of them together on the red carpet at the BAFTAs. He professed to have just been blown away by his blazing audition. But yeah, the energy, I think, is what we're seeing here. That this actor has a lot of energy, and yeah, maybe in the coming weeks before our next full-on podcast, we can go watch some episodes of Sex Education, or Sedgecation, as hardcore fans call it, and report back next week with what we think he's going to bring to the role of the Doctor. But very exciting.
Yeah. Well, I got to say, I really like that they didn't cast someone famous, because remember early on there was talk about Hugh Grant, and everyone wants to come to the table with their choices. I know that none of this was really taken seriously because it's more fan chatter. People were like, well, Kate Winslet would be good or whatever. And again, all fine actors, but I think we were talking about this a few pods ago. I like it when the Doctor, when someone's cast as a Doctor and that actor being the Doctor is their signature role, is their breakthrough.
Yes.
I mean, good, virtually everyone in New Who, I would argue, at least from a worldwide perspective, that applies to, because no, David Tennant in particular, the only one who wasn't probably was Eggleston. Eggleston, people kind of knew him,
Yeah.
but Tennant was not internationally known until The Doctor. Same with Matt Smith.
Certainly, Matt
and
Smith.
Now they're very, very strongly associated with the role. So again, the same deal with Whitaker and to a large extent Capaldi. And this guy, like, obviously not really well known.
Yeah.
He certainly will be now for many, many years to come.
Matt Smith, I don't know if you remember, had a role in a show called Party Animals, and that was sort of he was well known and talked about for that. So it seems this is the formula, right? You have the one show that you're kind of known for on your way up, and then bang, you become the Doctor. I'm guessing this probably means he's not going to go for the Tom Baker record of 7 years. It's probably going to be another 2 or 3 year run, but that's fine. And
that's how it's done. Well, this is cool. It's definitely another reboot, as we know. New Doctor, new showrunner. I mean, new old showrunner, but. Yeah, super exciting stuff. Again, not much to say about it now. We're still processing.
But
when we come back again.
Isn't it interesting, though, that last week we were doing the first ever regeneration story, The Power of the Daleks. And now here we are. Here we are with a new regeneration. The randomizer knew it was preparing us for.
Well, it's funny because, and again, when we're coming back to the real pod, we're going to do it in a second, but it's another Peter Davison episode, and we've done a couple of those lately. Another sort of through line for the randomizer. But when Davison was cast, he was 29. He was the youngest Doctor, by far.
That's right. Yeah. Same age. Yes, and I believe that during Frontios, which is the episode we're about to talk about, the story we're about to talk about, that's when Colin Baker's casting was announced.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense. Yes. God, this is the randomizer is not random, guys.
It is not random.
I'm fully convinced.
It took us
Davison stuff,
it took us to a regeneration episode, and then it took us to the episode where Colin Baker was announced. And by the way, speaking of the Hugh Grant rumor, at the time, just before Colin Baker was announced, the newspapers were absolutely convinced it was going to be Brian Blessed.
Oh, that's so funny.
Yeah. Which again, the rumor is it's a much more established figure, right? Because that's what sells newspapers.
It is. Well, selling. We've got stuff to sell here too, Chris. So that really exciting news. We'll obviously come back to it several times in the coming weeks.
Indeed.
And we've kind of already just done the previously on Pull to Open, but just to recap, we were just at Power of the Daleks, the first regeneration episode. Prior to that, we were at Eaters of Light, until recently the lowest rated episode of Doctor Who, but honestly the most Scottish episode of Doctor Who, and bit of a not quite a gem, but like interesting stuff that are gem like within it, if you would care to revisit. And before that, Terminus, Davison, and we've sort of now coming full circle with Davison and Turlough. So Davison Turlough episodes, which the randomizer loves. And we're at
not
Frontios.
Quite coming to full circle, but we are coming full circle to yet another Turlough story. And also, it's I feel it's kind of my fault that we were brought to Frontios, because when we were doing Terminus, I would often confuse it with Frontios, as in, I just couldn't remember Terminus that well, and stuck in my head next to Frontios. They were indistinguishable, so the randomizer obviously said, well, let me show you that one that you keep talking about as well. But anyway, we'll get to that. But first let's talk about where we are with charts and reviews and the show in general.
Yeah, so obviously, obligatory, please leave a review, plug here, even if you do not listen to us on Apple. We'd really appreciate if you went to the Apple podcast app and reviewed us. I know a lot of you guys like it on Spotify. That's awesome. Please keep listening on Spotify, but it's the visibility in the Apple podcast store really, really helps the pod. So if you have a second, check out that app, look us up, leave a quick review, quick rating. And if you do leave a review, go ahead and leave us your version of what a Dalek is expressed as in emoji, which we've talked about, but also now RTD has come out and said
That's
how to express
right.
Dalek in emojis.
This is so wild. The sort of the random connections that happen with the show. We've been asking you guys for a while to do reviews, and some of you have listened to us and sent us your reviews of different Doctor Who stories in emoji form, making us guess what those stories are. And we were talking just last week or maybe the week before about what would a Dalek be in emoji form. I think we landed on an octopus and a car, given that we'd just been to Genesis of the Daleks and we were talking about Mark III travel machines. So I just love the idea of an octopus in a car. It feels very RTD, that one. But no, RTD came out in the last couple of days and said, here is my emoji of a Dalek. I don't know if he's actually listening to the show. If you are RTD, please do leave us a review. But also,
whatever emojis you want.
Yeah, whatever emojis you want, dude. It's fine. But his emoji of a Dalek is a trash can and a plunger. Which, why didn't we think of that? Why didn't we think of that? There's no pepper pot emoji. I think this is the problem here. But trash can is close enough.
I think that's the kind of emoji I would expect from someone who makes the show.
Yes.
Like it's almost like thinking about it in prop form. So totally acceptable. You guys go ahead and use your version of a Dalek, whether it has octopi or trash cans, plungers, or the water gun.
Yes.
Or whatever you like.
And definitely please do it if you're listening in the Netherlands, which we've just discovered is a very popular place for the show.
Yeah. So oddly enough, according to our stats, according to the charts, the things we're looking at, that we have shot up the charts in the Netherlands, and we're currently in the top 10 among podcasts for TV reviews. I think we're briefly as high as number 7 there. So shout out to all you Dutch fans. Thank you so much for liking the pod. Not sure if we got to mention somewhere or we just got a bunch of super fans in that part of the world, but hey, tell your friends.
In my experience, people from the Netherlands, they're ahead of the curve on many things and much more enlightened than the average fan. So I can see why we'd be a big hit there. But yeah, shout out to our new Dutch fans. And,
well, speaking of big hits, for our TikTok audience, as everyone knows, we're on TikTok at Pull2Open, all one word, and we've blown past 7,200 followers. We're closing in on 10K, but we had a bit of a viral post in the last week where a lot of our stuff from Eaters of Light has been posting the last little bit, and we had our comments about it being a Scottish show.
Yes.
And my, oh my, did a lot of people have opinions and thoughts and the corrections I'll get to on
retcons.
Doctor Who being a Scottish show. So when we talked about Doctor Who being Scottish, we talked about the episodes because obviously Eaters of Light completely spent in Scotland. It has a lot of Scottishness in it.
Very much
so. We were talking about Jamie and the Highlanders being the previous time they'd gone to Scotland. But actually, they've been there before, and I'm kicking myself for not thinking of these. So obviously, they went in tooth and claw in the new series, so that was a big deal when Queen Elizabeth was sort of visiting there.
Victoria,
Or Victoria, sorry, yeah. And one of the only times David Tennant uses his real accent in the show. So good stuff.
Yes.
And they also obviously visited Scotland in Terror of the Zygons, all about the Loch Ness Monster. So
yeah, how could we forget that one? Oh, it's quite easy because Doctor Who is this giant show where you cannot hold it all in your head at once. But yeah, I'm glad that we started to pull on that thread. So thank you again, Randomizer, for taking us to Scotland.
Yeah, and I sort of did my own little head-on, facepalm about Terror of the Zygons because it's such a vivid memory of the Brigadier in a kilt.
Yeah,
it's like,
and doesn't Baker wear like a Scottish hat at some point in that? He
has like a tartan thing going on. So yeah, it's all very very Scottish. So lots of Scottish connections. Lots of Scottish enthusiasm for the show and the show for Scotland, so good stuff. We have a TikTok comment of the week as well, because in Eaters of Light, there is a scene where Bill talks about the TARDIS doing auto translate. It's the sort of companion moment where she realizes, oh yeah, everyone kind of speaks English, but they don't. It's just the TARDIS translating. And then she also mentions that they do lip sync, which was kind of like the big reveal, not really reveal, but the first time it's sort of acknowledged that, of course, not only does it translate, it would have to sort of do some weird perception filter on lips to make it sync with what the English version of the words you're hearing. So the TARDIS is very thoughtful, and the Time Lords have thought this all through. So there was a comment on that video from a guy named Jordan Smith, and Jordan suggests the TARDIS translator is my headcanon on why all the Time Lords call it a TARDIS, even though Susan invented the word. And I like this because it's the best explanation I have read so far for how to reconcile those two things, right? Because obviously early in the show, they didn't really know what the origins of the TARDIS and the Doctor would be. And they basically said in the first episode, I believe, in Unearthly Child. Yeah. Susan made up the word TARDIS based on an acronym. And then now all the Time Lords call it TARDIS, as everyone calls it a TARDIS. And actually, the Gravis in the episode we're about to talk about today calls it a TARDIS. So it's sort of a common word.
Susan had thought to copyright the word, she'd be raking it in. Every time someone says TARDIS, you have to pay Susan 5 cents. My read on Unearthly Child was always that this, Susan is a bratty schoolgirl who just makes shit up. Of course, you'd go to a school on Earth and be like, "Oh yeah, I invented the name TARDIS, and by the way, I've got a boyfriend in Canada."
You've just guaranteed Carol Ann Ford will never be a guest on our program.
Oh, I'm so sorry, Carol Ann. Come tell your side of the story, please. Please tell us how Susan invented the word TARDIS.
But it was a great discussion on that video as well. So thank you, Jordan, by the way, for this one. And it's definitely going to be my headcanon as well going forward. I had to give an honorable mention to another comment on this video, though, just because I just think it's hilarious. So a commenter named Greg says this about auto-translate. And it's like, auto-translate engaged. Well, I say auto-translate. It's not really auto-translate, is it? It's me. It's Muggins here who has to do it. He's obviously speaking for the TARDIS there, so I kind of ruined that. And I think I could sort of, I didn't do an accent because I can't really do accents very well. And there's clearly like, I just love the idea of the TARDIS going like, with the, the eye up attitude to the Doctor. Yes. Oh, I guess I'll auto-translate for you, Doctor. Oh, okay. Yeah, it's just me here.
Yeah, we need the voice of Idris here to say that.
Yeah.
Auto-translate. Auto-translate.
I feel like the comment is a bit of like, bringing in a little Spirit of Red Dwarf with Holly. I imagine it in Holly's voice.
Yes.
It's not auto-translate. It's me doing the translation. Yeah. I'm sorry. I said I wouldn't do the accent, and I did.
Muggins here. Yeah. Yeah. Good old Holly.
Cool.
Yes. Speaking of comments of the week, we did previously have a comment of the week that we have to issue a correction to. That the commenter issued a correction to, where we talked about. They were wondering on the show what the last episode would be like.
Right, yeah.
And we were wondering whether that meant like we immediately thought of survival, right? The last episode of Doctor Who, as in the end of the classic show. But that's not what they meant.
Right. No, they did a correction on their own review. This was Quantum IND in Canada. They said, they meant to say first lost episode. Whoops. Which, okay, I get it. And we've done one.
And we just did one.
The Daleks.
See, the randomizer is listening. We read out that comment, and then the randomizer took us to Power of the Daleks. The first completely missing, in terms of the original film, from the series that we've done. So yes, Quantum IND got their wish. So if you have a wish for the randomizer, please jump in, leave us a review. We should also mention there's going to be a prize for one of the first 50 reviews, and I've been asking Pete steadily what that prize is. We've narrowed it down to New Who. We've narrowed it down to Eccleston, Smith, or Tennant. Oh, or Capaldi, I guess. Crap.
Yep.
Okay, I've got this week's question. That's given me this week's question. Is this prize, which we already know it's not very easy to find on eBay or anywhere. It's completely rare. It is mineral in what it represents, as well as the construction of it. It's got something to do with New Who. It's not the Jodie era. So I'm going to ask you, is it from the era of a Doctor with a Scottish connection? A Doctor whose actor was born in Scotland?
Yes, but it's not the strongest connection.
So that leads me to believe it's Tennant. It's a Tennant era. Wait, not the strong. How could you say that Capaldi would not have the strongest connection to Scotland?
I'm going to have to say a little more here to clarify. It's not isolated to a single Doctor. And I think I might have said too much already.
Oh, you know what? I really should have asked RTD or Moffat. That would be another way to narrow it down.
Yeah. Okay, I said too much. Now there's going to be a lot of theories coming at us. Yeah. So you can follow up on this next week on the prize as we close in on 50 reviews. So keep leaving them, please.
Yes.
Also keep subscribing all over the place. We are available on all the services. I rarely give a shout out to the maybe lesser known services that we're on. So we're also on Castbox, we're on Overcast, we're on Pocket Casts, and we're on Radio Public, in addition to the ones I mention every week, like Spotify and Amazon Music. So if you're on any of those services, or if you know friends who are, please share out and leave a review if the service can do it, or a heart.
Yes,
which I believe you can do on some of these. We're also on YouTube. We're uploading every week. The audience is growing there. We're getting videos, more and more videos. So please check it out. Subscribe there. And Twitter and Instagram, we're doing more and more. So we're at Pull to Open 63 on both. And we're going to start sharing more exclusive photos that Chris and I have sort of built up over the years, and not just like, the cover of a DVD or whatever, like photos of things we have or places we've been with related to Doctor Who. We'll see more there.
Interviews we've done as journalists, yes. Yeah. And over on Twitter, we have one of our friends of the pod has done something that we've talked idly about for some podcasts now, of just sort of ranking the episodes that the stories that we've been to already into some sort of order. And one of our superfans has done it. Pete, who's the superfan?
It's Patrick Perrine, who we've mentioned before, friend of the pod, a very faithful listener. Thank you, Patrick, for listening week after week. And he's done it. He had looked at all the stuff we did, I think, up until the Power of the Daleks, and he's ranked them in terms of, and he's ranked all the quality of the episodes, not the podcasts, I think, because it seems to line up with that. But his favorite apparently is Silence in the Library, which is a good choice and an interesting choice, given that we've done Day of the Doctor, Genesis of the Daleks, a few others, which also appear in his top 10. But I'm definitely not going to begrudge him that choice. I think Silence in the Library, it's a modern classic.
It really is one of the ones that we've watched. I mean, we already obviously liked it before we rewatched it, but I think it's one of the few that has been really tremendously improved by rewatch. Just in terms of how I think about it. Like I got so much more out of it. So much more. A lot of headcanon came out of that story. We discussed it in that episode. So, I'd have to say solid choice. Thank you,
and
Patrick.
Also, he put Midnight as number 4, which, again, given how much I enjoyed the episode and how much our fans responded to the episode, both on TikTok and the podcast, I'm not sorry. Like, basically, history has judged Midnight very favorably, more than you might expect from if you've only seen it the first time on its first run,
and certainly more than we expected when we went to it. I think that's part of the joy is of covering every single story in Who history. This quixotic quest that we're on, that we do unearth these gems that we had no idea were gems. So thank you for that, Patrick, and thank you to all our listeners. Do keep listening, commenting, subscribing, and let us know what you think about Frontios when we get around to discussing it.
Well, also follow us on Twitter at Pull to Open 63. Check our mentions. You'll see Patrick's rankings. We retweeted them, so you can just go to our profile and give us your own. Give it to say hi. Tell us whatever is on your mind. Give us your thoughts on Ncuti Gatwa or whatever.
Yes.
So good times.
Or rank your least favorite episodes. Hell, rank your least favorite Pull to Open episodes.
Do that.
Give us our
We're happy to
worst.
talk about them because
Yeah.
we've definitely got our rankings, which we may not share until the very end. But good times.
Yes.
Okay, we do have one more bit of business
Oh,
to
God.
get past
Yeah.
before we get into the actual episode, and it's a question for Chris,
Oh, God.
which is,
Yeah.
have you seen Legend of the Sea Devils yet, Chris?
No, this is going to become a thing. No, I've not. I'm definitely storing it up at this stage for later viewing and for that the long interminable length of time that we have before the next actual and the final Jodie special, in which Jodie will regenerate into Ncuti Gatwa. Very exciting.
It's so long away you might want to put yourself in hibernation for eons and just hope that the moon coming into orbit will wake you up.
20 eons. Yes, we're going to be talking about eons in the context of Frontios.
Definitely.
Yeah. I'm going to wait an eon because this just become a show segment as we go on over time. Maybe at some point it's going to pop up on HBO Max, and it'll be a lot easier to watch it without the ads. So maybe I'm waiting for that too. But there's so much good stuff on TV right now. I'm having such a hard time keeping up with it all.
I know. Well, we'll tap you on your hibernation chamber when it's out there. But the questions will continue, not just about Legend of the Sea Devils, but also, are you ready
for
our regular feature now? We're getting into it. We're getting into the picking apart of Frontios. But before we do that, we've got to do it, Chris. We've got to do it. It's TLDW. Too long Doctor Who.
Definitely too long Doctor Who in this case.
As you may have discerned, it's Chris's turn.
Yeah.
And he has, because this is a classic series episode done in 25-minute episodes, and each one of those gets 30 seconds, you will have a full 2 minutes to summarize the plot of Frontios. Are you ready, sir?
I am. I've closed all my windows, and it's that moment right before you do DLDW where the entire story vanishes from your brain, and this is one of those nightmares. Like I feel like I'm standing up in front of the school. I have to give a lecture in Chinese, and I've totally forgotten to prepare. It's all my school nightmares come back to me.
All right.
But
I want you to be ready because I think the one time I kind of rushed you into it. It was Genesis, and it was a little bit. I thought that would be good, but I don't think it was. So
I'm still not.
I'm just going to give you.
I think it was Genesis matters a lot. Frontios really matters a lot less. So I might be able to get through this one.
Okay, so I'll give you a countdown, and then away we go. Here it is. The official pull to open summary of Frontios begins in 3, 2, 1.
So we start on the planet of Frontios, which is a future human colony towards the end of the universe, and the leader of the colony gets sucked into the ground at the very beginning. And then we cut to the TARDIS, and it's Tegan and Turlough and the Doctor, and they're getting sucked in towards Frontios for some reason, even as the Doctor's distracted by his hat stand. And they land there, and they discover that Frontios is being bombarded from above, and they don't know who the enemy is. It's been happening for years. During one of these bombardments, the TARDIS apparently gets destroyed, and the hat stand remains. So the Doctor and Turlough are sort of using it to fend off the suspicious locals who are led by this guy called Plantagenet and this Chief Orderly Brazen, who doesn't want anyone to know about the missing people who've been sucked into the earth. The Doctor investigates, and he helps fix lots of people who've been hurt in the bombardment, and the technology is really bad. So the Doctor and Tegan go down into the earth, and they discover that there's this sort of gravitational pull down there, and it's there's these monsters called the Tractators, and their leader called the Gravis, who is trying to create all these tunnels. The planet uses a gravitational ship that can go around the galaxy and invade other planets, and through a variety of means, the Doctor basically gets the Gravis to pull the bits of the TARDIS back together, seal the Gravis in, drops him off at another planet, comes off, saves Frontios. Chief Officer Brazen dies, in this machine that has the head of the former colony leader. It gets sucked in, and then they all leave the colony, but something else is happening, and they're getting sucked into the center of the universe at the very end in the TARDIS. And there's a lot of people left on Frontios who are rebuilding the colony.
And time.
You didn't know where to go at the end there. It's like, I've kind of summarized it. I've done it. Like, what else is left? Do I talk about the hairstyles?
You could have. You could have spent a whole 2 minutes, honestly, on the fashion of this one, which is about as 80s as it gets for Doctor Who. But great job.
Thank you. What do you think I missed?
I think there might have been, it might have missed it, but I think you glossed over really quickly what the Gravis's master plan was, like what it actually wanted to do and how it wanted to sort of conquer everything by piloting Frontios, essentially. And it's kind of similar to what the Daleks were planning in the Dalek invasion of Earth, to then go invade and plunder every other planet they possibly could.
And kind of similar to the Mondes thing that we've covered before.
True.
Yeah, the whole wandering planet concept, and also a little bit similar perhaps to the mysterious planet, or there is a connection there to like what on earth has happened to Earth,
right?
Like that's why the colonists are on Frontios, because something bad happened to Earth, and we don't fully know what it is, but it seems like it's something connected to the Ark in space, or the Ark. I always get those two confused. But also might have a connection to whatever happened to the Earth and the mysterious planet.
But I think the planet wandering, piloting through space, and then we can invade things seems it's kind of an interesting sci-fi idea in terms of like scale when you're conquering species, because you're like, okay, well, rather than building a bunch of ships and having whatever, well, why not let's just pilot a whole planet around. On some level, it sounds like it's more efficient. It probably isn't. It's actually probably a lot less efficient, but it's also simpler. I got to say, in terms of selling it here, if you want to do some headcanon around it, kind of seems like mastering gravity would be one of the ways to make that more efficient. So you could throw that in. But I actually really like, and this is part of when I was thinking about what if the evil plot had succeeded, I kind of like it with the Tractators, because their whole thing is a bit there's some subterfuge in how they invade, and they kind of like I think as describing them as an infection going throughout the universe, I honestly think it might be a little more effective in the way they do things, that this plan of theirs.
So two things I didn't mention. First of all, it turns out the Tractators are pulling down asteroids from the asteroid belt. That's what the bombardment is about. They're basically trying to destroy the colony, get everyone sucked into the Earth so they can use them in their machines that use body parts. And gross. There's a lot of body horror in this. Or there's supposed to be a lot of body horror. And then the other thing I didn't mention is Turlough chewing up the scenery. Mark Strickson really, he named this as one of his best episodes, but honestly, I really think it was just very, very scenery chewing, where he sort of gets a bit delirious, and he starts talking about how the Tractators threatened his world, which now that we know that Turlough came from the planet of Trion, because this is the randomizer taking us back to the very beginning of our random journey, which was Planet of Fire.
That's true.
Where we get to find out the origin of Turlough's story that everyone has completely forgotten about by that point. And it's sort of this drip of revelations about Turlough's past. Like, the randomizer is very interested in it. I don't.
You know why? Here's a good theory on this, because it's so random.
It's so random.
Like, we have this thing, this villain of the week, and we want Mark to do a little more because maybe his agent's been calling JNT. So it's like to give it, but it's not really. There's no real connection to Tryon. You know what I mean? It isn't thought about. And the way you see Tryon, I think it's like 2 episodes later. Like, you kind of think about, like, you don't even actually see Tryon. You just see that they're this sort of spacefaring race. But the idea that the Tractators could infect a planet that presumably is a very large population and is worldwide, and it's not just some random tiny colony. I don't know if that works, right? Like it's fun to think about Turlough having some history with these creatures, But to think that they actually like threatened Tryon is a little weird. It's again just kind of random.
Yeah, and we don't know if it's Tryon or if it's this adopted homeworld that Turlo is talking about. Like, it's not, even
It's a Tryon colony, maybe. That's
even
what you might think.
as it gives us the Turlo origin story that everyone forgot about and nobody asks for, it kind of still messes it up further because what exactly did they do to him? Honestly, the best bit of Turlo world building in this is where at one point he pulls a piece of currency out of his pocket.
Right.
And it's a piece of I can't even remember the name of it, but it's currency with a hole in the middle, and you blow through the hole for good luck. And Turlo has this thing. It's like it's as if he's got a coin in either hand, and the daughter of the chief science officer has to pick which hand, and it turns out Turlo had currency in both of them.
Yeah.
But just something about currency with a hole in it, and you blow through it, like that's good world building. Which is not necessarily in evidence anywhere else in this story.
Well, also because he's like gaming the system by putting a coin in both hands, it's like Turlo still dishonest to the last.
Oh, Turlo, you
that's
sneaky,
so Turlo.
Sneaky schoolboy, yeah.
I could definitely see why Mark Strickson probably liked this episode. I mean, arguably he does overact, and I get that. But I'm also like, I think he was given more to do and more choices to make scene by scene, like, do I overdo it? Do I underdo it? How do I sort of show trauma? Like, you could argue the choices he made were great in some places. I thought he was fine. I just think it's more of a, it's just that exasperated or traumatized Turlo gets old pretty quickly.
It really does. He does a lot of staring into the middle distance with sweat on his forehead, while it takes two people to carry him because he's so weak. And
just randomly comes out of it, at some point, and then which is kind of like, I guess that's a little bit realistic in that you have trauma and you kind of, if you have mental health issues, that you sort of weave in and out of them. It's fine. I would think you would feel a little more guilty about Brazen getting chopped up because he had an episode, which is, again, I'm not trying to blame him. You have like mental health issues. It's not your fault, but it is like he's Brazen, who has been probably one of the roundest characters and sort of the character among the colonists, in my view, who it's most clear who he is.
Yes. It's clear right there in his name. He was given the name Brazen because he is.
And he's the guy who's trying to hold things together. He's obviously the security dick who's just like a jerk to everybody. But you understand why. Like, he's been told he's the glue. And if he doesn't do his job, this whole thing's going to go to crap. Like, and it does anyway to a large extent. And that's, like, I think one of the reasons why, again, I like the whole thrust of Frontios and what the world building it is trying to do with the colonists. But I do think, I wish you could have, this is where one of the budget issues comes up. I wish there was more, you felt it more about what they had when the people looted. I wanted to feel that more, that they're like destroying or taking the last remnants of this thing, because I feel like all of that should matter more than it does.
Yes.
And you could do a more convincing part of the episode where there's this colony with politics and incompetent leadership, people not liking it, and a lot of that could have been more visceral. You could have felt it more.
Yeah.
And as it is, it's just a distraction, because as soon as the Tractator show up, you're like, oh man, like, I want to know about the monster.
Right.
Because it's at that point now, it's the most interesting thing.
There is supposed to be a rebellion on Frontios, right, in the background, and it just coming here. So this, for me, this is the first reason why the randomizer brought us here directly from Power of the Daleks, because we were talking last week about how great the world building is in Power of the Daleks. Because obviously Doctor Who, at least 50% of the time, the Doctor is landing on a planet with an Earth colony. It's kind of one of his favorite locations to go to. So, but the great thing about Power of the Daleks were these few moments of world building where it's like, Janley, the one who keeps switching sides, she wasn't a bad person. They talk about the governor going off to shore up his support with the miners on the perimeter, and that's why he's away from the center of action when there's a coup d'etat back home. Like, we really felt even though, again, the rebellion was not necessarily believable in Power of the Daleks. It was kind of a bit of a crappy rebellion. Which it also is here. But you kind of believed it because there's just a deftness of touch and a few details thrown in that made us care, even though all of the humans on the colony of Vulcan in Power of the Daleks are really, really bad, pathetic, human beings who are just their tiny political concerns. You definitely believe it. Whereas in Frontios, you're just like, really? What? So this was a colony ship, and you were all. And it's supposedly a hospital ship, right? Given the fact that Brazen is a chief orderly, but you don't get any sense that that's what it was, and it sort of mutated from being a colony ship to being a hospital ship to being like this militaristic colony,
right? And they're all in uniform still, even though it's like 40 years later, which is that was a little weird. But it if they had fleshed that out a bit more on. If someone had, say, commented on that and they're like, well, it's because it's Brazen, right? Like, it's just like, you have to do this because if we don't have discipline and we don't have uniforms, we're the whole thing's going to fall apart. Well, so I would have liked it. Like, a lot of that's implied. So I got it, but it's also like, I would love to see just feel it a little more and see that in the characters. And I will just say it, like, I agree with everything you said in terms of the parallels between Power of the Daleks and Frontios, and where one succeeds and another one, I wouldn't say outright fails, but you definitely, it's a blander version. And I'll just say it. I think the performances, like, I think the Power of the Daleks, like, you have these really good acting, like basically good acting and good characters. Here, I think whether it might be the performances, it might be the writing a little. I think it's a little bit of both, but I do think apart from Brazen, most of the colonists are pretty forgettable.
Well, we should let's briefly talk about the fact that Brazen was played by a guy named Peter Gilmore, who would have been. We're gonna talk about this so often. I feel like we should have a special segment called Chris discusses the history of British television and how you would have viewed this as a Brit at the time, because Peter Gilmore starred in a show called The Oneiden Line, which was a soap. It was a soap opera set aboard a clipper ship in the 19th century. Yeah. I mentioned this to my wife just before we started recording this podcast, and she immediately went to YouTube to look up the Oneiden Line, because it has the one thing every British person remembers about the Oneiden Line is a great piece of classical music before it. Like a super cheap show, nice. But that classical music made it sound amazing. But anyway, this guy, Peter Gilmore, was the head of this clipper ship, and he's like this hard-bitten sea captain type, which you can really see from his performance as Brazen, right? How he would fit in that old sea dog role. But then the other connection is Plantagenet. Now, Plantagenet is the son of the head of the colony,
just Captain Revere.
Talk
about it,
who gets sucked into the ground at the beginning, and I did mention that because he shows up again as a head on a machine in the end. By which point you've completely forgotten who he is. But Plantagenet could have been a very interesting character. He's the son of Revere, and it's kind of interesting. It kind of suggests that the colony is developing backwards historically. Right, which is something we've seen a few times now. This was a thing in Genesis of the Daleks. It was a thing in A State of Decay,
right?
Where the civilization was a state of decay, reversed medieval. And so we're going from Captain Revere, which suggests Paul Revere, like, revolutionary America.
Well, also just the name.
Yes,
he was revered.
He was revered.
Right? Like, I mean, it's such a clear double entendre.
And then his son is Plantagenet, who's this sort of like, trying to fill his father's shoes kind of character. But also Plantagenet definitely recalls it's the name of the royal house of England from about the 12th to the 16th, 12th to 15th centuries. The War of the Roses basically wiped out the Plantagenets, brought in the Tudors. So that's a reference to that. Yeah.
But with the Plantagenet, like, this is where I'm a little split on Plantagenet, because I definitely get that he's this kid who has been sort of thrust into responsibility and he's not really ready for it. And that's part of the reason the colony is crumbling because he's not very confident and people are losing confidence in him.
Yes.
And I think the casting and the performance somewhat are intentional in that sense, right? But I do think it's just I don't think there's quite enough there, and in that like I'm not looking at nothing really is like, oh, that's a moment that really is getting that across.
Yeah.
It's just kind of on paper for
Yeah,
most of it.
I
And there's even yeah,
totally forgot the Plantagenet was supposed to be Revere's son for most of it. Like, it's
yeah,
super confusing. You have banners with Revere's face
right.
supposedly all over them, which I guess is supposed to keep his head top of your mind so that it makes a difference when we see the head again at the end on the machine.
Yeah.
But
I also
like
just felt
the
like
banners aren't very
yeah,
clear. It's just,
yeah, I think they put those in because for the very reason you
yeah.
mentioned, which is like you forget about who it is, but it just feels like weird. You're not really paying attention to that either.
Hmm.
But do you remember Plantagenet's first scene? He's kind of at the top of he's almost like on a throne,
Yes.
and he's kind of like pensive, and it is the weirdest choice. I mean, unless like it just makes no sense in terms of
Mm.
this colony. Like you literally have time to like ponder your thoughts in some kind of throne room
Right.
in a colony ship when you're like pragmatically like there's stuff to do, dude. You
Yeah, and
know,
what even is his title? Like, we don't even get a sense of what the structure of this
right?
colony. If they are reverting backwards into monarchy, which is believable,
Yeah.
as thing we've seen again, and State of Decay was a great version of that. Then let's say that. Let's give him an actual title. But I do have to give a shout out to Jeff Rawle, who plays Plantagenet, because he was not known then on British television, but he would become a major character in a 90s sitcom called Drop the Dead Donkey.
Oh,
And the principle of Drop the Dead Donkey, is really beloved by journalists because it was set in a TV newsroom. And the idea was that every week they would write the jokes at the last minute, right? So right
okay.
before it aired, so it would be super bang up to the minute, right? And it was, it worked occasionally, but it was a great idea for a sitcom. But Jeff Rawle is in that, and he plays a guy named George, who's the head of the newsroom, and he's kind of an ineffective leader, and he's always kind of bowing to the new corporate overlords, right? Who just bought the news station, right?
Home.
Yeah, so that's
I'm upset about that.
yeah, that's it's you might watch Drop the Dead Donkey these days as a journalist and go a little bit too real. But yeah, that was Jeff Rawle. So he's kind of has a type. Brazen was the hard-bitten sea captain, and Jeff Rawle becomes the ineffective leader guy.
Interesting.
Kind of thrust into his position. But
then I wonder if Norna becomes 80s hair woman for the rest of her career.
Yes,
because
we haven't even mentioned
Dunlop.
Range and Norna. Range is is William Lucas. He's the sort of the chief science officery guy. He's got the little moon glasses. He's very sciencey dude.
This is definitely a type in Doctor Who, which is to say the sciencey guy who usually skews older, who befriends the Doctor and is instantly kind of won over because they are kindred spirits and sort of kindred intellectuals. Happens all the time.
Yeah,
and you have to kind of ultimately make that person somewhat ineffective and tragic, because otherwise it's just too much on the same side, right? Like so that's kind of definitely the case here with Range.
But his daughter is Norna, who, as you say, has the most 80s hair.
Yeah, it's a contest. I'll tell you that, because when she and Janet Fielding are on screen at the same time, you're very much like, who is more 80s here? And it's a really tough call. But if you're going by hair, I gotta say it's Norna. She looks like every 80s video with her blonde spiked hair, sort of coming out. Yeah.
Tegan and Norna really could be an 80s group. I can totally see it. But yeah, Tegan
80s girl band.
80s girl band. Yeah. Tegan is dressed super 80s in this. She's got the leather skirt and the heels that she skitters around in. My
and
God,
the loud sort of tank top.
Yeah.
Again, I got to say, for the 80s, she looks fantastic.
Yes.
Like she is like clearly in the last season that Janet Fielding was there, because like first season she's air stewardess. Second season she's got the infamous kind of like, I don't even know what to call it. It's like the white doll costume or something.
But
with
finally,
the short hair, Yeah, finally in Janet Fielding's last season, again, maybe her agent was calling JNT because they let her be her, I think. I
Yeah.
think Janet Fielding, young, attractive woman, and she wants to show some style. And she definitely does this season. This is one of her best outfits, but holy man, is it impractical for wandering around colonies. She's got heels on, she's got a skirt.
I
It's
really
like
want to read a history of Doctor Who companions in heels. Like, how many of them actually wanted to wear heels, and how much was it mandated? Because, my God, the
Yeah.
amount of skittering around on studio floors. We were just talking about this with Perry in Attack of the Cybermen, right?
Yeah.
Poor thing.
I
And
think they could have at least said something like, some throwaway line at the beginning, like the doctor promised we'd go clubbing.
the hottest nightclub on Gallifrey, you said.
And then just sort of end up at Frontios because
Yes.
it's like, oh no.
Yeah, speaking of Gallifrey, this is sort of a weird episode where the Doctor seems overly concerned about the Time Lords.
Yeah.
Because this is so. Again, another reason why I think the randomizer brought us here is that we've been talking a lot about the end of the universe.
True.
And whether, utopia counts, because it takes us forward 5 million years, I believe, to try and shake off Captain Jack.
Right.
The TARDIS runs forward.
Probably does.
And here we are in a very similar situation with what we're told is the last human colony, and that we're told that it's beyond the normal reach of the Time Lords.
Yeah, there's a weird thing on the screen where it's like space-time limits reached or something.
Yeah.
And I kind of wonder what they were sort of doing here, if they were consciously trying to do a little bit of conscious show building within the show.
Yeah.
I think it's definitely something of a message to the show structure, like outside the show, which is to say, like, they're trying to discourage writers and the direction of the show going in sort of a galaxy far, far away kind of way, right? Which arguably you could with all of time and space, but ultimately Doctor Who, I mean, as anything, is always about the human condition and keeping it within the limits of the human race or stuff relevant to it makes sense. I mean, I think it doesn't need to be stated; it's just kind of obvious. But if they felt it needed to be, that this is kind of it. But within the show, like, what could the limit be? Why would they have one? The Time Lords, in terms of like the end of humanity's, I guess, time in the universe being a relevant limit. I'm not really sure.
It is very bizarre, and I've seen sort of a number of fan attempts to make this make sense in the context of Frontios. One suggestion being that is actually when Gallifrey exists contemporaneously, so you can't go beyond the present day on Gallifrey.
Right.
But also, if it's beyond the limits of Gallifrey, and the Doctor keeps telling everyone on Frontios, like, if some Time Lords show up, I was never here, I never interfered. Like, he seems particularly concerned about that this time.
Yeah.
But like, if it's
even
beyond,
though he's technically president of Gallifrey right now, if you think about it, because this is like in between the 5 Doctors and Trial of a Time Lord. So as far as he knows, he's still president.
And
so maybe
what?
He's worried about his office, his station. I don't know.
It's funny that you say that, because there's the little side trip at the end where the Doctor takes the Gravis off to some uninhabited planet where he can tunnel away to his heart's content.
Right.
And then on the way back, like, a bunch of the audio adventures have been squeezed in.
Yeah.
And one of them is one of the few big finishes that I've listened to with Peter Davison. He goes back to Gallifrey, becomes Lord President, and Tegan just hangs around. They haven't returned to Tolo yet. They're like off on this side quest. And but yeah, this is the one where the Doctor actually fulfills his role as President of Gallifrey. I wish I could remember the name of it, but it was fairly recent. I want to say like 2017-ish, Big Finish audio, and I really enjoyed it.
Is it called Perfect Day? Or Keep It in Real? Oh no, Time in Office.
Time in Office, that's
I'm
the
just
one.
looking at the TARDIS wiki.
Yes.
And yes, so because a bunch of adventures are set there, which kind of makes sense, because the end of this one, even though it doesn't quite match up with what's happening in Resurrection of the Daleks, it's clearly a lead-in to that, which is something JNT would do here and there. And we actually, another randomizer connection, very similar to the way Terminus ends, right?
Yeah.
Where the Black Guardian's yelling at him, "You have one last chance," yelling at Turlo.
Yeah, kill
And
the
so it's almost
Doctor.
like a cliffhanger. And this one is even more of a cliffhanger because something's happening to them, and what it turns out they're getting pulled into a Dalek time corridor. But he
Right.
says something around the lines of, "We're being pulled to the center of the universe," which sounds
again
like
brings us back to Terminus. Yes.
right. Yeah. So yeah, interesting stuff there. But I like how they slip in adventures wherever you can. I think we all have our sort of our headcanon, and I think we explored this most fully when we did Closing Time.
Right.
When that's the first adventure when after Matt Smith his doctor is apparently aged over 100 years or a couple hundred years.
Yeah, and so, there are so few moments, particularly with Davison's Doctor, right, where he's actually alone or alone-ish. I don't think he ever actually travels alone.
Not that we see. Yeah, exactly. You'd have to really like contort, and they probably have to fit certain things here and there.
Yes.
I've listened to some of the audio adventures with him and companions, and said like I know there's also Sirens of Time where he's kind of alone and in some multi-doctor episodes. So you kind of have to, figure it out in various places, and I'm sure you can, but I'm just glad there are spots.
So speaking of cliffhangers, it's sort of telling that we haven't talked about the end of episode 1 cliffhanger, which is sort of maybe one of the lamest attempts at a cliffhanger that JNT, the controversial cliffhanger that JNT ever did, which is the destruction of the TARDIS. And it sort of sounds like even when Peter Davison announces it, that it's almost like he doesn't believe in it himself. Like, oh yeah, the TARDIS has been destroyed, and the Doctor doesn't really seem to care much about it.
Yeah.
But this was supposedly JNT at the time was like hoping to make us think that he might actually get rid of the TARDIS, which is
he's certainly it's
I'll let you not gonna happen.
Not gonna happen. But it's certainly like in keeping with everything we know about JNT, trying to make the show more interesting, trying to get at least to the extent he could then into the show's DNA a bit and shake it up. Now, I don't think it's that bad. I think you didn't like it. I like it because at this point, Doctor Who is, once it says something, actually this would just be on, it doesn't matter what point, but he says the TARDIS has been destroyed, and it's like, okay, you said it, like you can't go back on that, and that like it would just be unforgivable for him to like just say, oh, I was wrong, oh, it's actually not. So they do it, and they do bring it back together, and it's a little flimsy in literally and figuratively, but I do like that they did it, and they tried to find an interesting way to have it come back. And you could argue, okay, whatever, reset button, because it's what they do. But it's like, okay, they for an idea in this episode, I'll give it a passing grade, if not top marks. Again, like if they really did it and the Doctor really felt it, you think there would be more of a performance, which is what I think you'd be getting at. That you'd be a little lost,
right,
emotionally, not literally, but.
Anyway. I mean, it's interesting. So again, yet another reason for the randomizer to bring us here, because I made the mistake, apparently, several pull to opens ago, of talking about how much I love episodes with the TARDIS that feature the TARDIS during the episodes, right? Instead of just, oh, we arrived here and we've forgotten we have a TARDIS and now we're going to go back to it at the end. Since then, it's been messing around with that. It's been showing me Terminus, which has a lot of internal TARDIS scenes, but no external TARDIS. It showed us Genesis of the Daleks, just like, hey, look, classic episode, no TARDIS, huh? And now here it is with like, oh, so you want more TARDIS in your TARDIS? Like, how about we blow it up? And then
you have more pieces of the TARDIS.
Yeah, exactly. I kind of like the dream logic of it a little bit, kind of the way the TARDIS slowly comes back together and it's got all rocks around it. I would just love more explanation of what's going on. And also, maybe this is an idea for RTD or some future showrunner. Like, at some point, maybe let's do a Pertwee thing again with the Doctor stuck on one planet. But maybe let's not make it Earth. Maybe let's actually destroy the TARDIS, just as they actually genuinely destroyed the Enterprise in Star Trek. and leave the Doctor stranded, maybe with a companion or two. Maybe give us an entire season on a planet like Frontios. Really world build the heck out of it, and just stick the Doctor there and let's see what it's like. And we can retcon at the end, or another Type 40 TARDIS can just happen along. But yeah, it's a great concept. Unfortunately, it was just misused for publicity purposes.
I think it will happen someday, and I hope RTD has some things like this in his mind. If he doesn't do it, someone's got to do it, because it's not just been done in the show with him isolated on Earth, but it's been done in the books, a couple of times. And there was I don't know if you know about the early New Adventures, but there was the bit where he loses the TARDIS in a parallel universe.
I didn't know that.
And gets the Doctor's TARDIS from that universe and uses that for quite a while before getting his old TARDIS back. That's actually a big thing in the New Adventure. It's actually many, many books that he has the other TARDIS.
I love it.
And then there's also the bit where the Eighth Doctor adventures where he's kind of stuck on Earth. His memory's gone. This is like when the books destroyed Gallifrey, and he stays on Earth for hundreds of years, something like that. And then sort of eventually, like, I think I forget. Honestly, I didn't read all these, so someone's going to have to fill in the gaps there. But they did it. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, they did these things and they were interesting. So, like, why not do it? I guess it's a little bit, if you're casual viewers, the show might get a little more impenetrable. Is probably the concern.
That is true, but it's also like, we always understand that, like, a really good thing to do in drama is take the character that everyone cares about and then take away the thing that they care about.
Right.
That they most care about, which clearly with the Doctor...
they most identify with, so that they have to really rethink who they are a bit.
Exactly. And with the Doctor, the TARDIS is the Doctor's wife. We know this. And like that relationship, whenever it's explored, is really great. But also, like, you think of great episodes like Blink, where the TARDIS has been taken away from the Doctor, and I always go back to that great line in Blink: "Someone's taken my motor. Someone's nicked my motor." Yeah, and I love it. I love lines like that. Yeah, Strand, and he's never he's so bad with TARDIS security. Like, we know this from throughout our history of seeing the Doctor, like, from the Sensorites removing the lock of the TARDIS to, like, Cybermen just walking in Attack of the Cybermen, which, by the way, yet another reason for the randomizer to bring us here. Attack of the Cybermen, JNT playing with the notion that the chameleon circuit might fix itself.
Well, geez, you should have, like, kept the Gravis going for another minute. Maybe that would have done it earlier. Can we just briefly mention that this proves the TARDIS is not indestructible? I know, again, it depends on the script and the showrunner at the time, but it's so funny that the TARDIS has a reputation of being indestructible, except ... There's a Gravis pulling highly potent meteors at your TARDIS with the gravitational forces. I think the X factor here is that, if you need one, it's that the Gravis, right? And it's obviously its powers of gravity are massive, and because the TARDIS has, clearly works in some extra dimensional kind of way, gravity, as everyone knows who's read Brian Greene, is kind of like the special force that may actually extend into other dimensions at the super micro level, right? This is where string theory comes in.
And time is dependent on gravity.
There you go.
Yeah. So it really needs to be incorporated more in Who history. I think that, the more that we investigate the TARDIS, the more we need to talk about gravity, especially the more we're discovering about physics. But it's a little weird, and so this was also the season. Was this the season where they got rid of the sonic screwdriver?
No, that was actually two seasons previous.
Seasons previous.
From another T monster, the Pteroleptals.
Yes. Yeah, the Tractators, by the way, I love the name Tractators, like, as unintentionally hilarious. And it's one of the few Doctor Who monsters that could really be a great indie band. Or an app for, keeping track of your potatoes.
The Tractators, can you dig it?
Now, welcome to the main stage of Coachella, the Tractators. Yes. From their latest album, Frontios.
Oh,
Yeah.
stop us now.
So the writer, we've not mentioned the writer of this
We
story.
should.
It is Chris Bidmead, Christopher
Mhm.
H. Bidmead. Woe to you if you forget the H. He's the guy who wrote Logopolis and Castrovalva.
Right, and we talked about him a bit when we did State of Decay,
Yeah.
because he was the script editor, I believe, at the time, right?
Yeah. And he's sort of a
and-
hard science guy, but
Mm,
that kind of leads him into kind of being very, very pseudish, very sort of like, Logopolis and it's pure mathematics. It gets
right.
it feels very sciencey, but it's also a bit kind of like you can't fully understand what's going on in a Bidmead script. But he does, like in those other two stories, he loves to investigate what the TARDIS is, what it can do for the Doctor. Like he gave us the Zero Room in Castrovalva to help him through his regeneration.
It can work.
Yeah. And here he is again, sort of trying to investigate the TARDIS, but being distracted by other stuff.
Yeah, I think Chris Bidmead, his whatever is you think of him in any individual story, I think it's been a net positive to Doctor Who that he's been involved, especially at this time where there were sort of interesting things happening scientifically in the world, and a lot of sort of modern science, and it was kind of coming to its own at the late 70s, 80s, and he wanted to incorporate that stuff, and it's great. I do think what we said in State of Decay applies here, which is to say he, as you've just been talking about, his sciencey interest is clear. His actual skill as a writer and translating that into drama, probably not as good. So it's best to get him paired with someone who's good at that. So in Decay's case, it was like Terrence Dicks, who might not be the absolute best, but he was definitely like, he could write tight Doctor Who.
For sure.
And here, probably there was just less of a check on that, because as I was talking about again, I didn't mean to sort of put a bunch of blame on the actors in terms of the performances, but I do think there's not quite enough on the page for a lot of these people to work with and really make it visceral in terms of particularly the politics of this place, which I think Bidmead is less interested in exploring than the sciencey gravity stuff. And I think if you had a script that really balanced those things, I think you'd really have something. I think Frontios could have been like an A+ script. You think about something like Caves of Androzani later this season, which does that super well. Like in terms of like really strong characters, a clear politics of the place, and also interesting sciencey stuff with like mud bursts and whatever else, right? So a little bit of gravity there again.
It's really interesting. We're so close to the end of Davison's run, and he has mentioned this as the story where he really got who his Doctor was. Right?
Totally.
He finally nailed it at the end, and you do kind of like the Doctor is firing on all cylinders in this one, especially the scenes where he's literally acting as a Doctor. And helping the victims of the attack. It's really cool. He's got his little, like I'm wearing my half moon spectacles today in honor of Davis's half moon spectacles in this, because he does have so many wonderful scenes of them, and it's like he really comes across as different from all the other Doctors. Like he's no longer sort of trying to play a version of Troughton, which is kind of where his starting point for playing the Doctor. He's coming to his own. Yeah,
100%. To reverse, like not reverse my comment, but the other side of the comment is the lead cast, particularly Davison, is like at their best here, and I think yes, he's very, very good. He's kind of quirky and funny when he needs to be, which I really liked. He's the bit with the hat rack, even, which he sort of leans into as a joke. My kids love that, by the way. I watched this with my kids, and when Turlo pulls out the hat rack and aims it, they laughed. They also really laughed at when he's poking fun at Tegan when he's pretending she's a robot.
An android, yes. and she's like, couldn't do anything about the accent. Sorry about that.
The look on Janet Fielding's face. I mean, really, really good. And this is one of the reasons why I think Tegan is the Fifth Doctor's best companion. There's this tension. There's more of a rivalry between the two at times. It's just interesting. It's fun to watch. And my kids and I, it was an LOL moment. We all kind of laughed because even my 9-year-old got it, that he was making fun of her in a friendly, ribbing kind of way.
So there was apparently more to that got cut. And one of the things, because it was going to be the Doctor showing that Tiga's an android by sticking a screwdriver in her ear. And the thinking is that probably got cut because the BBC was very afraid that kids would emulate whatever they saw on screen. We talked about this with the Gallifrey episode with Tom Baker being alone on Gallifrey. God, what was it?
Oh, a Deadly Assassin.
Deadly Assassin, thank you.
Yeah.
There's that kind of, the famous scene at the end with the drowning. They were worried that kids were going to emulate that. So they didn't want kids sticking screwdrivers in each other's ear. But apparently they're fine with kids taking the coat rack, taking the hat stand or whatever, and just sort of gesturing at it, as if it's a super weapon, gesturing at you like that was fine around the UK the next week.
Yeah. I wonder how many hat racks smashed through windows while kids were like throwing them around their houses in the weeks following.
Curiously, the Doctor Who branded coat rack came out the next day. No, it wasn't quite that much synergy.
If only it knew who, it totally would have. But yeah, no, it was good stuff. But yeah, I'd like to say, like, Davison here, he's very confident. I think he probably had more input in the role, had more choices, and they kind of let him be funny. Like, as I was getting at earlier, Davison's gone on record as saying this, that they felt they had to pull back a bit from Tom Baker when he took over, and they kind of generally had him take things more seriously and have more of a just a general serious performance, whereas here he's allowed to be funny. And I think this, similarly, I see the parallels with Chris Hemsworth as Thor, and I really think that series came into its own when they lean into, like, they took Thor super seriously, but by the time they got to Thor Ragnarok, it's like, let's just let Chris Hemsworth's a funny guy, let him be funny. And it's like, he's funny, and it's a much, much better movie. And so I think you get the similar thing here. This last season of Davison's, there's some of the scripts, whatever, but I mean, I think he's great in it, and it, obviously leads to a huge crescendo at Caves of Androzani, which also has both of those elements. There are funny moments and obviously extremely dramatic moments.
Absolutely, the Doctor has to be funny. It has to be part of their personality, and the Doctors that don't do that are the ones who don't do so well, right? And we talked a lot about Colin Baker a lot, and the unfortunate decision to make him an unlikable Doctor. And sort of contrasting that with Capaldi. We talked about it last week with Power of the Daleks, where Patrick Troughton comes in and is sort of deliberately unlikable up to a point in this first story, right? But most of the unlikableness is just playing the recorder and just being irritating and impish. So the you get to the unlikableness of the Doctor through the comedy, right? Through the humor, but it's central to the character. So and we definitely see it on display here.
We talked about a moment that wasn't as funny, but I think it might be Davison's best moment in the episode. It comes early on in episode 1 when Plantagenet just is trying to assert himself and kind of trying to sort of express to the Doctor, I think, how difficult things are. And he's like, well, what would you do? Or what do you think? And then Davison's like, well, since you asked, and he just turns right around on him and kind of dresses him down. Like, I think you're making some really bad decisions here, and your colony is going to be gone, pretty quickly if you, don't wise up, dude.
Right.
And because he's earned so much, like for us as viewers, we're all, we know the Doctor, we like the Doctor, we're on his side. But I think he also, because he has been so effective at helping them, particularly with their immediate medical crisis, he's earned the right to do that even among the characters. And it really worked.
It's very similar to that Patrick Troughton line in Power of the Daleks, where he talks about, yes, it's going to, it's going to solve the problem. These Daleks are going to solve the problems of the colony because there won't be a colony. Just such a wonderful line. But also there's some actually pretty good dialogue with the Gravis when the Doctor kind of has some one-on-one with him. I think it's time that we talked about the Tractators and the Gravis, though, because
we've come to that point. Here it is, guys.
We have come to that point because they were supposedly inspired by woodlice that Bidmead had in his apartment, but they look like nothing more than shrimp, giant shrimp, right? And it's one of the worst monster reveals that I think we've seen in our random journey. Because you just sort of like that we're underground, right? And the Doctor and Tegan they just sort of turn a corner. Was it Turlo who sees them first? I don't remember. You sort of turn a corner, and there they are, all in bright lights. Like
No, I
not a
disagree.
moment.
I think you might be misremembering.
Okay.
I thought it was a great reveal because I think we're talking about two different moments, and
Okay.
maybe I might get the order wrong. So I'm not sure who's right here. But the reveal, in my opinion, as I recall, was when the Turlo and I think Norna are in the cave, and they're kind of in this part. They stop to chat for a minute, and then they move on, and then the two sort of rock-like things you saw in the back turn to the right. And then you see their actual giant slugs. Because I remember this moment because my 9-year-old daughter got up. She was right beside me, and she was sort of resting on my shoulder. And then she just she tensed up because she hates bugs, and she was just like, bugs. And she was so scared. I mean, like just for a second, it's just a TV show, but it's like it was like I really loved that I got to be there for her because it's like such a great kid Doctor Who reveal moment.
Almost a hide behind the sofa moment. I love it. Okay, well, I'm going to temper some of my commentary on the Tractators then, because I sort of feel like they were almost Hartnell-esque in like how bad those costumes were.
Yeah, but better than the Zarbi, and no worse certainly. Yeah, no, I get it because they are kind of like these kind of slug things that they look extremely physically impractical, and they're not physically threatening at all. That said, I think that's the point, right? Because their whole power is the gravity. And, I like that there are certain rules that you can infer from this because you're never really quite sure how powerful they are sort of as a combatant. But when they immobilize people, it seems like there's a roughly 1-to-1 ratio of like you need one Tractator to immobilize one person, and maybe they could stretch it to more than that. But when the colonists all come down in force, they quickly overpower the one Tractator that's holding Tegan. So you kind of like I like that because as you watch these things as kind of like an action, the action movie part of it, you need to have certain rules in your head, of like what is the power of the villain here and what can you do about it? Because otherwise it's all just like smoke and mirrors and stuff just happens for whatever reason. You have to have some kind of framework. And here there's enough there to sort of go on, I feel like.
Yeah, and it probably would have been more effective if had it been Bidmead's original body horror idea of like all of the Tractator machines have human stuff attached to them, which is something that again, Randomizer connection, Girl in the Fireplace finally did. With human bits. We've seen that worked. That was acceptable by 2006, I guess, but wasn't acceptable in the early 1980s.
Fair. It's different things though. I do get it, but it's also like there's one thing to have like a heart or something that looks like within a computer system, but another thing to have actual like body parts. Like you're getting kind of into Texas Chainsaw Massacre type stuff. You can easily get into like, and I get it. I like, I like grown up Doctor Who as much as the next guy. Like I would kind of love to see that. But I'd also say like, I would not show that to my kids, or at least my 9-year-old, if it was that rough. So I get the impulse to pull back from that. I think it's two things: that impulse to pull back, as well as the budget, the sort of human horror of this, which could have really brought home the story, is really what my son would say nerfed. Like it's they just pull back. It's like it's not nearly as visceral as it could have been, and I feel like if they ever remake this or do the Tractators again, go a little further down that depravity well. Not all the way down, but a little further would have helped.
Yeah, I get what the threat is supposed to be. It could have been a bit more clear. Also, right at the end, Brazen gets sucked into the machine, right? That had Revere's head.
Yeah,
and it's sort of again kind of like the weakest little arms come out of this machine, and Brazen, this strong guy, is being held back by these tiny arms. Kind of reminded me of Terminus again, where there's a moment where Nyssa is being captured by some sort of machine with teeny tiny claw arms, and she's like, "No, I can't escape.
The
Can't escape the
sterilizing
teeny."
robot.
Yes, the sterilizer robot. I get teeny tiny claws. No. Yeah. So that definitely is a thing with 80s Doctor Who. But yeah, I wish I felt more of the threat of the Gravis. And that maybe there'd been a misdirect. They think it's the whole race, but like the Gravis is suddenly revealed among them, and I don't know. Something more was needed here.
Well, it also kind of doesn't make sense if you like what is the Gravis if it's not just like the queen bee or king Tractator? Like where did it come from in the first place? And why would you think these things are harmless just because you've removed it? Surely there's some way for a Gravis to emerge or arrive, or like, aren't they the same species? You know what I mean? Like, I would think like just from a security standpoint, unless these things are going to be useful at tunneling and you need that, like I would think the humans would just exterminate them all because it's like it's too dangerous. Like one Gravis and we're screwed again.
Lay down some bug spray, some sort of Tractator motels. Just get those woodlice out of there. But yeah, the Gravis is the Gravis referred to as a male creature, by the way? Is it a he? Yeah, because
I feel like they say he at some point.
Yeah, they do, because as you point out, like it's a queen. It's basically a queen in a colony, which we see time and time. Like it's the female of the species that tends to be the most powerful in any colony. So we just got some basic 80s sexism here.
It could be because those sexist slugs, man.
Yeah.
Okay, I guess I would make all the other ones females, but then I guess they're all having babies then, or no? Or I mean, again, there's no clarity on like how these creatures reproduce, so who knows, right? And I don't know if we ever need to revisit it, but it is like, I just feel like it's like, hold on, like what is the Gravis, And it'd be interesting if they said something like, maybe it was a one-off. It couldn't be because of Turlough's history, but if it was a one-off that someone genetically engineered a Tractator and then it came back to haunt them, that would be kind of cool. But that's a whole nother story.
That's
just too much.
Us pulling out our headcanon again. But yeah. What else do we have to say about Frontios? It's the first. Let me just get in like my final British TV connection. This is the first time that Doctor Who has used costumes from Blake's 7.
Oh, were those the uniforms?
Yes, the soldier uniforms with those helmets, which I totally recognized from somewhere, and it was from Blake 7. And that's sort of neat because every other time before this was like Blake 7 stole costumes and props from Doctor Who. So here it is, giving back.
Okay.
Giving back. And I liked the look of the guards and the uniforms. It sort of felt pretty cool.
I like that Plantagenet's tunic was like all red with gray accents, and the other ones were gray with red accents. That kind of worked. I got that.
It's kind of cool. Did they have name tags on? I'm like failing to remember at this stage.
I don't think so.
Name tags?
I think that's just PTSD from Power of the Daleks.
Or the Daleks, the name tags.
Costume PTSD.
I was going to say, like at some point, Doctor Who stopped giving its characters on colonies name tags. Like, I'm not sure when that is. Maybe our listeners can write in and tell us.
I want to go to colony in space now, and I might challenge the randomizer for that, just to keep our Earth colony streak going. Oh wow, I've already jumped ahead.
Oh boy, here it comes. It's going to be nothing but Earth colonies. Sorry, go ahead.
No, we got to talk about what if the evil plot had succeeded.
Yes.
So I already sort of get a little bit of that, but what's your theory?
So the evil plot is the Gravis is basically going to turn Frontios into a ship.
Right.
That can zoom around the cosmos. Not sure how that's going to work with the whole concept of planets need to revolve around a star at a certain distance in the Goldilocks zone to be habitable. Like he's just going to kill everyone on the surface pretty much immediately. And how long a journey does that take to actually get it out of the solar system? I mean, unless you're the Daleks and you can just steal 9 planets and line them all up as a journey's end.
He's that good at gravity, and presumably he can go at quasi warp speed or ultra warp speed. Otherwise, why even do it? Maybe he can get to the Goldilocks zone like pretty quickly before the
Hmm.
planet cools off in another system. I don't know.
Yeah. But presumably,
Maybe that's it.
ultimately, he's aiming for Gallifrey.
Well, this is what my theory, because it's like
Yeah.
I think he forgets about the planet plan, and here's how the evil plot succeeds. He doesn't take a nap as soon as he reassembles the TARDIS. So it's a really bad choice on his part to essentially take a nap right then. And if he doesn't, then he wins, right? Because all
Yeah.
he does is like gravity powers, doctors against a wall, pretty quickly figures out where the door control is. And I mean, he's just reassembled the thing, so
Yeah.
I'm sure he knows where the doors are.
Yeah. He's probably found
Lets
the
the
manual.
tractators in, and it just becomes a really gruesome end because I think he probably keeps the Doctor around for a bit to probe him for Gallifrey knowledge and TARDIS knowledge, puts Tegan and Turlo into excavating machines. Again, it's a little unclear why the tractators even need them, but I guess they need be a little more precise than their own burrowing. But regardless,
Hmm.
um, and starts conquering. And like I said, I think the tractators would be pretty effective
Hmm.
because they're clandestine in the way they do this. They're very like before your planet can mount a defense against the real threat, which is under the earth. They've taken it over.
Yeah.
And so they do this again and again. They start to get their own little region of tractator infected planets in the cosmos, and they become such a threat that other galactic powers or universal powers sort of start to take them seriously. But before that happens, they use the Doctor's knowledge to invade Gallifrey, right?
Hmm.
And then we'll see what happens. But
Gotta think that the Tractators aren't going to be much match for the Daleks or the Time Lords.
I think
Who
they'd
they will
avoid the
eventually.
Daleks for a while until
Yeah.
they dealt with the Time Lords. But the Time Lords, I feel like they might actually be effective again because Time Lords are very conventional. I don't think they'd see it coming.
Yep.
You'll see.
Time Lords be like, who's bombarding us?
Yeah,
We can't
especially
figure
with
it
the
out.
Doctor. If they have the
Yeah.
Doctor there as a prisoner in his own TARDIS, and he's telling like they're interrogating him and stuff, and probably using Tegan and Turlo against him.
Yeah, we should mention, by the way, that the gravity of where they lock people in place through gravity is produced with this sort of pink sheen, kind of hovers over the person. It's not
Right.
entirely clear what's happening to them, but very, very 80s music video effect, that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're going to
Yeah.
make you pink and we're going to reduce you to 2 or 3 tones.
And create a buzzing sound.
Yes, and you're going to be locked in place and forced to dance in a Duran Duran video.
So
Yeah.
So where is Clara in all this?
Oh
What do you
God.
think? Where's Clara Splinter?
Well, there's a famous continuity error in this where Tegan is trying to lock the colonists out with a door, and like she puts a handle through the door, and then I didn't even notice this at the time. I just read about it so much since when reading up on
I
Frontios.
noticed it.
Oh, you noticed that
I've noticed since the first time I saw this, but yes, I had
the
the same
bar is
conclusion.
suddenly on top of the door instead of between the door handles. It's on top of the door handles now. And apparently this was just they shot it too quickly or whatever. They were just using random shots to finish the story. But yeah, maybe Clara did that. Maybe she helped the Frontios colonists get out.
It's my guess. Because it was mostly because I find it the most bothersome continuity error.
Yeah,
possibly in all of Doctor Who, in that the bar actually moves and you're just like, oh my god. And never mind that the doors handles kind of made of cardboard, whatever, no big. But that thing moving just really bothered me.
I feel like Clara's got to be assisting with the TARDIS coming back together. That has
How would
to
you do that?
be. I don't know, but like the Clara splinters are intimately connected to the TARDIS, right? Because she stepped into the Doctor's time stream in Name of the Doctor, and was scattered throughout it while within the TARDIS. So you've got to think that part of this. And again, with Power of the Daleks last week, we were reminded that the original regeneration / renewal was said to be powered by the TARDIS.
Right.
And we got this whole thorny question of like, how much is the TARDIS, directing the regenerations? How much is the TARDIS in charge of the Doctor? I think the TARDIS, has a lot more agency than we knew in the original series, and I think that's part of the Clara Splinter's job.
Do you
is
think it
to
could be a bit of a Doctor Strange moment here where it's like it actually goes back and Clara turns off the defenses, so it destroys itself, but it
mm,
knows that it's in its own time stream that has to happen
right.
to keep going, you know what I mean? So
Yeah, maybe it can sort
that
of
that could reconcile the indestructibleness of it.
it can preventatively destroy itself into easily
Yeah.
gathered chunks. Um,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
So maybe Clara is in there and she's, maybe she's still stuck in the TARDIS somewhere in this splinter, and is coming out and hitting stuff on the console.
I like that. That
So
works.
yeah. By the way, the hat stand. I know this may be the most uh, basic, like completely not connected to anything important, but I love that hat stand so much in the Baker era. I was always looking when I was growing up and furnishing my first New York apartment. I looked for a hat stand just like that. I was like, I've got to have one of those in the corner. Is this the last appearance of the hat stand in Frontios? Like the one that
Mm,
has lasted throughout Baker? Some point got badly repainted to white,
right.
right, from brown, but you can still see
That's
that
very
it's a brown.
modern, but
It's very modern, barely a coat of paint kind of thing on it. Do
briefly
you know?
when
Do you,
Apple was in charge of TARDIS before.
yeah, iPod
Um,
style.
do I know if it's the last appearance of the hat
Yeah,
stand?
is this the end of the handstand when it's left on
I believe it
Frontiers?
is.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. I think it might actually pop up again sometime in McCoy, or a hat stand does, because he has
Mm.
his umbrella, right? He has to hang it on something.
And he has his own hat. He's the next Doctor to have a
True.
hat. Yeah. Okay. Well, I
So
don't
when was
know.
that? What if it's the same hat stand? When was it created or
Yes.
destroyed? Maybe it's never was. Maybe it
Oh
just
my
loops around in the
God.
TARDIS. It's a
It's
paradox. The paradox of the TARDIS hat stand.
it's actually all about the hat stand, and now I'm sure we're going to get lots of people writing in about New Who. Like I'm sure there's a hat stand somewhere in New Who. There's got to be a visual reference.
What if the
Um,
hat stand is also a TARDIS?
it was actually
It's
the
for
Master's
really skinny
TARDIS.
people. Really
Yeah.
skinny Time Lords are in there.
The Master slips out of the hat stand from behind
Uh,
the hat stand. Aha, Doctor, you've been taking me along for all of your adventures. Yeah. Okay. All
yeah,
right.
let's go for it.
We'll keep that for future episodes if it recurs. Also, we should mention Peter Davison's celery, which is looking a bit
Mhm.
ropey, but does actually get used in this as a is it the wind direction in the tunnels? He figures out he takes a
Oh,
little piece of celery off,
God, I
drops
didn't
it to
even
the
notice.
ground.
Oh, is that what he was doing? Okay.
Yes. I think it's the wind direction or the
Yeah,
gravity or something. He drops a bit of celery.
nice.
So celery is actually useful here. Again, as we saw in
Yeah,
Terminus, like it was supposed to tell us when the gas or the radiation was leaking out. It really
yeah.
didn't, but it does at least work with gravity and wind and tunnels. So
You know, it's funny because you remember the Daleks talking about vegetables in the original Daleks episode, and I just feeling like there's some kind of vegetables through line throughout
mm.
Doctor Who. Now that I think about it, let's keep spotting because it's always a little incomprehensible. Like, what is this obsession with vegetables? But they are good for you,
Yeah,
and
that's right. It turns out to be
kids
that.
eat
That's
up.
it's the whole long game of Doctor Who. It's a very very shaggy dog story about and the moral of the story is eat your vegetables. The final Doctor turns to screen at the end of the final Doctor Who episode.
That's what the show is all about. Just eat your
Yeah,
vegetables,
yeah,
guys.
yeah. We've been doing this for 60 years, and this is what we were trying to tell you all along. Did you notice? This is actually
Well,
Veggie Tales.
it pulled it off here. Way to go to use the celery. I'm giving our rating system. Is it a Dalek? Is it an Ogron? Is it a Viscount banger? I think this is a Dalek. It's a wobbly one though. It's kind of
Yeah,
it gets enough. It's enough interesting sci-fi stuff and fun things. Great Davison performance, but good stuff. Glad it's here. It really needed more to stand out.
it really needed more, and there were so many missed opportunities here. One we haven't mentioned is that the Tractators were supposed to be that, like they hired dancers to be the Tractators because they were supposed to
Mm.
curl and uncurl, like and be a bit
Oh, that would
more.
have been actually way cooler.
Yeah,
Yeah,
right. But the
hard to do though.
costumes
Yeah.
costumes didn't. They were too solid to make that happen. So
sounds like the same guy who was doing Terminus's costumes.
Exactly. Exactly the problem. Like Terminus was such a goes wrong show kind of moment for the costumes among many other factors. So
it is kind of great that people creating Doctor Who have these great ideas, and they were so constrained by budget back then that it gives you a good feeling of like the creative juices that were going, at least, even if they wasn't fully realized on screen. And it's great that, obviously it was eventually resurrected and you could actually realize most of that on screen. It's just probably a little too bad that in the first season of New Who, they decided to do it with farting aliens, but they did other cooler stuff as time went on. So
I'm going to give episode 1 of Frontios a wobbly Dalek. And I'm going to give the rest of them strong Ogrons.
Oh wow! Well, that's averaging, not great though.
Not great.
It feels like it's averaging an Ogron.
Ish, yeah. I mean, it just sort of like there was so much promise, and I watched the first episode, and I was like, "Oh, this is not Terminus," because I was impressed. I actually care. I'm actually interested in these characters. It seems much cleaner. And then it kind of lost its way a little bit. But,
all right. Well, it's time for us to lose our way again, Chris, because we have come to the time to say goodbye to Frontios and then look forward to where we are going next. It's time to activate the randomizer.
It is. So while we do so, would you like to explain as we step into our TARDIS and activate the Black Guardian avoiding randomizer? At least we hope it is. How this works? What are the components?
Yeah, the randomizer, as everyone knows by now, consists of 2 components. The first is the codex, the pull to open codex, which is a complete listing of every Doctor Who television adventure, all the way from Unearthly Child to Legend of the Sea Devils, the current most recent episode. That's 300 stories by we're counting. This is our count, not the official count, which ours varies a little bit, and we're happy to explain where we decided to put the demarcation lines between stories, because it's not always clear, especially when you have a 14-parter that's all the same title, which is clearly intended to be 4 different stories, for example, like the Trial of a Time Lord. So there's that, and then there's the other component, which you are in command of, I believe.
That's right, the Executor, played by random.org, which looks for atmospheric noise. Basically, that's how it does random numbers, because we are stuck in a world of computers who don't know how to be random, and they basically just use an algorithm to guess at a random number, but it's not truly random. But atmospheric noise, that's very doctorish. So that's why we use random.org. And do we have challenges for the randomizer?
Oh, yeah, absolutely we do. What did I say just a few minutes ago? I can't even remember. But I you know what? I'm throwing that out. And I'm saying bugs, more bugs.
More bugs.
I'm obviously thinking about the web planet, but
I think you wanted more colony ships. Actually,
well, we could have them both in Planet of the Spiders.
Yeah,
so there's bugs or colonies. Colonies and bugs would be triple Yahtzee again. Not quite getting Doctor Who the movie, but pretty close.
So here's my challenge for the randomizer. I'm looking at the codex, which you can also see via the show notes. And, it's pretty filled in.
It's getting there.
It's getting there. But it looks like the longest break that we have between stories that we've done, just kind of scrolling through it, is between Trial of the Time Lord Mysterious Planet, which is number 142, and School Reunion, which is number 172, and that whole space, that whole space includes Colin Baker, the whole of Sylvester McCoy's run, Paul McGann, Chris Eccleston, and the start of Tennant. Right. This is a huge swathe of untouched territory for the randomizer. So let's go somewhere in there.
The transition period, we might start calling it. Yeah, I'd love it. Yep, very cool.
So all right,
let's get to it, man.
All right. We have our marching orders for the randomizer. It is not going to do anything that we said, although it sometimes does on a delay. Like it's probably backed up with our requests from episodes past. But yeah,
Can we start doing this in Dalek voices? Randomizer activated.
Activate.
Instability factor.
Explain,
Out of control.
Randomizer. Explain your choice. Would you like fresh organic vegetables? All right, so give me a countdown. I'll hit generate.
All right, doing it in 5 rels. 4, 3, 2, 1.
No, not the mind probe.
28.
Oh, it's ignored you. No, it's time locked.
It's the 10th planet. It's trying to take us to the 10th planet again. It's been a while since we did that. We haven't even had to explain it for a while. But yes, we treat episodes as time locked. At some point, we're just going to have to take out the ones we've already done out of the codex. But we're not at that point. Again,
if we ever get to the point where we're bouncing left and right,
which may happen this time, who knows?
Pretty confident we'll get there in the next try. Or
all right,
whatever.
Give me another countdown.
All right, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Allons-y.
56. It really wants to do Classic Who.
It is the Claws of Axos.
Oh my goodness! A 4-parter from Pertwee in season 8. A season where we have already done Terror of the Autons. And no
colonies, no bugs, but
yeah, it almost hit colony in space, which would have been a little too on the nose.
I think it was aiming, and it just didn't quite get it. That's already why the randomizer brought us here. But we'll see, because I did mention Axonite just randomly. I think 2 podcasts ago. So
you did.
Maybe that was it. Maybe I planted the seed.
You mentioned Axonite, and I sort of laughed like I knew what Axonite was. But I've not seen the Claws of Axos, so I'm very excited about this. Wasn't it also? Didn't we talk about Mind of Evil at some point? Was that where the one where the state of temporal grace comes from?
No, sorry, that was the Hand of Fear.
Hand of Fear. Hand of Fear, Mind of Evil. Yeah.
Another emotion. Similar, nonetheless. I'm excited about this one. It's 4 episodes, so it's not too heavy a lift, which is going to be pretty good in case we have a special guest.
We might have a special guest from another Doctor Who podcast on the show next time. So yeah,
watch
looking
for
forward
that.
to...
Not too heavy a lift. I didn't want to scare him away with the war games.
Surprise!
So I've already revealed it to him. But anyway, keep on guessing on who it might be, and we'll. Other than that, guys, we're gonna leave it to you to do your thing, which is enjoy Doctor Who without us for a little while. There's certainly lots to talk about. Congratulations again to Ncuti Gatwa for again becoming the 14th Doctor. Looking forward to talking more about him and hearing more about him. But guys, remember, this is a podcast. This is Pull to Open, where we randomly bounce around the entire canon of Doctor Who on TV. And if you haven't subscribed for whatever reason, please do on whatever service you're using. Now, subscribe to us on every service you're using. Please leave a review. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Pull2Open63, and of course on TikTok, where we are super active at Pull2Open. Chris, any final words?
Just get ready. Get your claws out. Get your claws out for Axos. We'll be back. We'll be back in the Pertwee era. And we'll be back in the pre-Pertwee having full control of the TARDIS era very, very soon.
Guys, it's going to be a masterful podcast.
Ooh. Spoilers.
Alrighty, guys. Talk to you soon.
Take care.